Good morning, bonjour. We are to start with the next session. The next session is entitled ICT Deployment for Transformational Growth Post-COVID-19, and we have five presentations. I encourage all the presenters to be respectful with the time allotted for all of us. We have 10 minutes to do the presentation, and if you have questions, please use the chat. And at the end of the 5 presentation, we will address all the questions. And then the first paper is a paper in which I am a co-author, and this paper is development of ICT in Africa to promote sustainable economic growth and social inclusion. I'm going to upload the presentation. I think the presentation is uploaded.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. The work I have prepared with my colleagues Albert Ajema and Victoria Opoku is entitled Development of ICT in Africa to Promote Sustainable Economic Growth and Social Inclusion. And what we will show in this presentation is a summary of the work in progress in which we are involved. In this first slide, we want to show a general outline of the main issues of our work. The basic idea that supports our work is that all kinds of infrastructure, and ICT infrastructure in particular, are key issues for economic and social development in all the countries in the world. The available statistics show that the degree of development of ICT infrastructures in the African continent presents worse data than those of other comparable countries in income level. Nevertheless, there is a remarkable exception when talking about mobile communication. The number of mobile subscriptions in Africa is at a much more than acceptable level. The two main messages of our work are as follows. The first one is that it is especially important for Africa to develop its fixed broadband fiber optic network, which saw a low level of development so far. Second is that investing in this network may not be profitable in the short term for the firms if only traditional investment valuation criteria are taken into consideration. So we think it is convenient that they receive an institutional boost. To conclude this first slide, we saw the following issues we will address in the presentation: review of the literature, data, and conclusion and policy recommendation. Regarding the literature review, it must be said that there are quite a few studies on the impact of ICT investment on economic and social development, both in developed and developing countries. So we are not going to make an exhaustive analysis in this presentation. However, we do want to pay attention to an interesting study published by the International Telecommunication Union recently, more specifically in 2019. This study analyzes the impact that a 10% increase both in fixed and mobile broadband connection has on the growth of countries measured by the GDP. The conclusions of this study are very interesting. On the one hand, the lower the income level of a country, the greater the impact that the development of mobile broadband has on growth. On the other hand, the higher the income level of a country, the greater the impact that the development of fixed broadband network has on economic growth. These statements can be confirmed in the figures shown. In this regard, it should be noted that in the high-income countries, an increase in mobile connection does not affect growth. The reason may be that given the high level of mobile connection already achieved by this kind of countries, an additional increase does not add value to the economy. This could be the explanation. It is also very significant that in low-income countries, fixed broadband connection have no impact on growth. The reason may be in the lack of training and economic structure to take advantage of these opportunities provided by these networks, which are taken advantage of by high-income countries. Now, in the next slide, we introduce the collected data. We have obtained population and basic ICT infrastructure data for all the African countries. Our sources are the World Bank and the International Telecommunication Union. We have grouped the data for African countries using two criteria: geographical location, northern, eastern, middle, western, and southern, the traditional classification of African countries, and income level: high, upper middle, lower middle, and low. Let's go to the slide number 5. And this slide shows population data for African countries. Only 0.1% of the African population lives in high-income countries. These countries are Seychelles and Mauritius, two small countries, while almost 95% live in lower middle and low-income countries. Population data will be used to calculate ICT infrastructure penetration ratios we are to show in the next slides. This slide shows data related to the fixed network broadband connection in Africa. As can be seen in the table, penetration in all groups of African countries are well below the average. We have the red color. If we consider all the countries in the world. In the case of low-income countries, the penetration of this type of connection is very low in all the countries, regardless of the geographical location. On the other hand, the gap shown by the African countries with upper middle income is especially wide. We have here only 2.32 compared to the 2013 of the world average of this group of countries. The graph in this slide shows the ratio of Africa compared to the best references in the world and to the Latin America area. The difference between the ratio recorded by Latin America, 12 almost 13, compared with Africa, 1.5, is very high. With regard to the mobile subscribers, all the groups of African countries, according to their income level, are above the world average. Only low-income countries are below. We should underline that the penetration of mobile communications in Africa is good news, and it's said that it has served to improve in a great extent financial inclusion. This is very important in our opinion, and boost payments using the mobile phone. Oh, sorry. With regard to the number of people who use the internet, the data for African countries are not good, except for that for African countries with lower middle income. It is especially significant that the Latin American area has a ratio 64 that is double that of Africa, only 30. In general, it can be said that this low ratio for Africa is worrying. Finally, some available data on households that have at least one computer and so on. Computer is a relevant tool for accessing the internet application with the highest added value. The most recent data available is from 2016, and data are not available for all the African countries. In any case, with the information available, it can be seen that the data for this indicator are not good for African countries. However, 3 of them, Seychelles, Morocco, and Mauritius, present a ratio that exceeds 50% and is also above that of China. Nevertheless, if we had more up-to-date data of today, for example, we think that China's ratio probably now would be higher. A very important dynamic issue of the digital economy is the generation of technology companies. As can be seen in the graphic of this slide, which has been taken from an Untitled report, North America and Chinese companies predominate. Europe has not achieved the dynamic way of the United States and China, unfortunately. With regard to Africa, the presence of this type of company is far from the United States and China. However, this is very important, there are a couple of success stories that highlight the latent dynamic way on the African continent. It is the South African companies named Naspers, which focuses activity on online television and has very relevant stakes in technology companies such as the Chinese company Tencent. The other success story is Safaricom from Kenya. This company has been a promoter of innovative mobile payment solutions, such as the successful and very well-known case of M-Pesa. And finally, in order to be on time, I am to summarize some conclusion and policy recommendation. First of all, we must clearly state that the extension of mobile communication in Africa has been a success story that has allowed progress in financial inclusion, very important for African countries. But on the other hand, the leap in quality must be given with fixed broadband networks. An investment effort in the deployment of fixed broadband networks, complemented with measures linked to training and education, can provide a boost to sustainable growth in Africa. Finally, FDI, foreign direct investment, can play an important role in the rollout of such networks. However, and from a financial point of view, as I mentioned previously, multinationals in the telecommunications sector may be reluctant to this type of project in the current situation. Many of these companies in the world, especially in Europe, and more specifically in Spain, should reduce their debt ratios, and we think that investing in Africa is not their priority at this moment, unless there are some kind of incentive in form of some form of institutional promotion. And with this final slide, I'm finishing my presentation. And now we are to begin with the next one. The next presentation is the paper. I think that in this case we have to have the presentation in French, and the author is Midawi Urira. the title of this presentation is La digitalisation, un levier pour une internationalisation plus dynamique des petites et moyennes entreprises.
Merci beaucoup,
Bonjour, Medawi.
Bonjour, monsieur. Merci beaucoup. Donc, je vais essayer de partager l'écran. Oui.
One moment, because probably I should stop. No, all right.
C'est lisible? C'est bon? It's okay?
Yes, now this moment is perfect.
Merci. Donc, bonsoir tout le monde. Alors, avant de commencer ma présentation, je tiens à vous remercier de nous avoir donné l'opportunité d'intervenir sur cette thématique intéressante. Alors, mon intervention porte sur la digitalisation, un levier pour une internationalisation plus dynamique des PME. Alors, et pour ce faire, on va essayer donc de procéder par une introduction, puis après, on va parler de l'internationalisation ainsi que la digitalisation des PME et on terminera avec une petite conclusion. Alors, comme vous savez, dans un contexte économiquement mouvementé, la digitalisation est devenue plus que jamais un des leviers proclamés pour une transformation profonde et suscite de nos jours un intérêt de plus en plus croissant dans tous les domaines. Donc, au niveau de l'internationalisation, les outils technologiques numériques sont considérés comme des facilitateurs de mobilisation pour atteindre les objectifs commerciaux internationaux des PME. Donc, dans ce contexte, et surtout avec l'apparition de la pandémie du COVID-19, le recours à la digitalisation est devenu une urgence. Autrement dit, répondre correctement au changement numérique est le principal défi à moyen terme auquel les entreprises sont confrontées aujourd'hui. Il est à noter que la digitalisation n'est pas un phénomène nouveau, mais un phénomène qui ne cesse pas d'évoluer, touchant les entreprises du monde entier et constituant une opportunité pour les petites et moyennes entreprises de participer à l'économie mondiale. Bien que la digitalisation, l'internationalisation, les PME soient des sujets centraux, la relation entre eux reste un petit peu floue. Donc, cette réalité nous a poussé à réfléchir, à poser la question suivante. Comment la digitalisation peut être un levier important pour accélérer l'internationalisation des PME? Donc, de cette question principale, révèle plusieurs autres questions. Quelles sont tout d'abord les approches de l'internationalisation des petites et moyennes entreprises? Quelle est l'approche la plus répandue? Et qu'est-ce qu'on entend par la digitalisation et comment celle-ci peut être au cœur de l'internationalisation? Pour ce faire, nous allons essayer d'explorer les recherches existantes pour élaborer notre revue de la littérature autour des questions suivantes. Donc, commençons tout d'abord par une définition de l'internationalisation. L'internationalisation est un terme obscur qui se clarifie uniquement de recherche en recherche. Selon Kalof et Biyamish, il s'agit du processus d'adoption des opérations des entreprises, telles que la stratégie, la structure ou les ressources dans des environnements internationaux. Wesh et Liostaria, ils ont défini l'internationalisation comme l'implication croissante de l'entreprise dans les activités internationales. Finalement, et selon Schweizer, c'est là où l'entreprise s'engage pour une meilleure performance au sein du réseau sur les marchés mondiaux. Donc, passons maintenant aux approches de l'internationalisation des petites et moyennes entreprises. Alors, plusieurs approches de l'internationalisation sont identifiées, mais le modèle par les étapes est la référence la plus répandue de toute étude de la PME. Dans cette approche, l'internationalisation est considérée comme un processus linéaire, séquentiel et progressif. Cette approche englobe le modèle Uppsala et le modèle d'innovation. Donc, selon le modèle Uppsala, l'internationalisation est décrite comme un processus qui s'effectue en 4 étapes. Tout d'abord, l'entreprise, elle n'a pas d'activité d'exportation régulière. L'entreprise exporte via un agent indépendant. L'entreprise implémente une filiale de vente à l'étranger. Et finalement, l'entreprise effectue sa production dans le pays étranger, comme il repose sur la distance psychique et l'apprentissage organisationnel. En ce qui concerne le modèle d'innovation, il considère l'innovation comme un processus comparable aux étapes d'adoption d'un nouveau produit. Donc, plusieurs études, ils ont démontré que les innovations en matière de produits et de procédés contribuent également à l'internationalisation, car ils agissent comme des leviers de la propension des entreprises à exporter. Donc, cette approche par les étapes, elle a reçu plusieurs critiques, plus particulièrement la critique de l'idée que les entreprises, surtout les PME, doivent suivre un chemin progressif spécifique pour s'internationaliser. Donc, dans ce cadre, d'autres études, ils ont souligné que les différentes étapes du processus d'internationalisation d'une PME ne sont pas toujours progressives. C'est pour cela qu'ils peuvent donc démarrer leur activité internationale ou entrer dans les marchés immédiatement en entrant dans plusieurs pays à la fois ou en créant des entreprises communes sans expérience préalable. Ces entreprises, ils sont appelées International New Venture ou bien Born Globals. Donc, pour les Born Globals, ce sont des entreprises qui ont commencé à exporter en moyenne 2 ans après leur création. Également, ils ont réalisé 67% de leurs ventes à l'exportation. Pour les autres entreprises qui sont les International New Venture, ce sont des organisations commerciales qui, dès leur création, cherchent à tirer un avantage concurrentiel significatif de l'utilisation de ressources matérielles, humaines, financières et temps et de la vente de produits dans plusieurs pays. Donc, une autre approche a été mobilisée dans le cadre de l'étude de l'internationalisation par les PME, c'est l'approche par les réseaux. Donc, lorsque l'on s'attache à cette approche, l'internationalisation est définie comme un processus cumulatif dans lequel les relations avec les partenaires étrangers sont établies, développées et entretenues de manière continue afin de répondre au développement international de l'entreprise et de la stratégie. Donc, d'internationalisation des firmes. Donc, il est lié plus exactement aux besoins de développement des connaissances, d'ajustement et d'exploitation des relations établies dans un réseau. Donc, les auteurs de cette approche soulignent l'importance des liens et des relations dans l'internationalisation. Donc, Shetty et Blankenberg déclarent que l'internationalisation se fait de 3 manières. En créant des relations avec des partenaires dans de nouveaux pays, par un engagement croissant à l'égard des réseaux étrangers et en renforçant la position de l'entreprise dans le réseau. Ainsi, le succès de l'entreprise à pénétrer de nouveaux marchés dépend de sa position dans le réseau et les relations au sein du marché actuel. Donc, finalement, et selon une approche par les ressources et les compétences, l'internationalisation est un processus qui nécessite la mobilisation d'un ensemble de ressources et des compétences dans l'entreprise. Donc, après avoir défini l'internationalisation ainsi que ses différentes approches dans un contexte de PME, nous allons passer pour expliquer comment l'internationalisation des PME peut être accélérée par leur digitalisation. Mais avant d'expliquer cela, on va passer par une petite définition de la digitalisation. Alors, on entend souvent parler de la digitalisation, de la numérisation, de la transformation digitale et transformation. Donc, ce sont toutes des notions qui sont évidentes. En général, le digital est défini comme un moyen de couverture pour un contexte dans lequel les entreprises et les organisations opèrent. Ils pensent que pour certains cadres, c'est une question de technologie. Pour d'autres, le numérique est une nouvelle façon d'interagir avec les clients. Et pour d'autres encore, cela représente une toute nouvelle façon de faire les affaires. Donc, plus particulièrement, Gartner, le leader mondial des technologies de l'information, donne une définition pour la digitalisation des entreprises. Donc, c'est l'utilisation des technologies numériques pour changer un modèle commercial et fournir de nouveaux revenus et une valeur ajoutée. Donc, c'est le processus de passage à une entreprise numérique. Donc, on va passer maintenant au point pour expliquer que l'importance du digital dans le développement international des PME. Donc, depuis la fin des années 1990, les ventes se sont tournées vers un nouveau modèle d'internationalisation. En dématérialisant les frontières et en réduisant les coûts, le commerce électronique a fondamentalement changé la façon dont les affaires sont menées. Donc, l'exportation vers les marchés étrangers par le biais des ventes en ligne est devenue une stratégie concurrentielle très importante et particulièrement vraie pour les PME. Donc, pour ce faire, il s'agit d'utiliser des plateformes en ligne. Ces derniers permettent de réduire les coûts de transaction, les coûts associés à la publicité et à la promotion, les coûts de livraison et d'accélérer la communication. Donc, ce sont toutes des choses qui permettent aux PME d'atteindre plus rapidement et plus facilement les marchés mondiaux. Ainsi, la digitalisation peut accélérer l'internationalisation des PME avec des budgets limités pour l'entrée sur les marchés à grande échelle, de préférence par le biais des exportations. Donc, par conséquent, comme l'a indiqué Kim, l'Internet qui est un moyen indispensable pour la digitalisation, peut être considéré comme un moyen d'internationalisation à faible coût. Également, et selon une autre étude récente qui a été effectuée en 2017, réalisée par Covello et ses collègues, il a montré que les technologies numériques naissantes ont démocratisé la consommation mondiale, ouvert la voie à une vaste base de données pour l'acquisition de connaissances sur les marchés étrangers, comme ils ont amélioré la communication et l'échange de l'information, comme ils ont facilité également les transactions transfrontalières en augmentant les flux immatériels et en réduisant les dépendances géographiques. Finalement, et en guise de conclusion, nous pouvons dire que malgré l'importance accordée à ce phénomène, la plupart des PME ont du mal à s'engager dans un processus de transformation numérique mondiale cohérent parce que celle-ci nécessite des investissements et des changements dans l'ensemble des pratiques internes d'une entreprise. En effet, les PME doivent renforcer les efforts pour s'adapter à leur nouvel environnement technologique et ce, afin de rester compétitives, voire s'engager vers de nouveaux marchés. Elles ne doivent pas se contenter seulement à s'internationaliser, mais elles doivent être conscientes du rôle joué par la digitalisation dans l'accélération de leur internationalisation. Finalement, et d'après ce qu'on a éclairci, nous pouvons dire que la digitalisation est un atout très précieux à mobiliser dans le cas de l'internationalisation des PME. C'est une nouvelle façon d'accélérer l'internationalisation des PME. Merci pour votre attention.
Et merci beaucoup, Ulrida, pour votre présentation. And now it's time for the next presentation. The third presentation in this afternoon is the author is Amenet, and the title is Mobile Hotel Website in the M2 Era, State of the Art. Are you by here, Amenet? Yes, I think
yes,
so.
Hello? You hear me?
Okay. Yes, I'm hearing you. You can share the screen with all of us. No?
Yes. Could you see the screen?
All right, that's perfect.
Hello? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amenet from the University of Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. I'm going to talk about mobile hotel websites in the M-tourism era by providing a state-of-the-art updates. So my presentation will be in 6 parts, namely introduction, objectives, literature review, methodology, results, and finally conclusions and implications. So the revolution of mobile technologies, a growing number of travelers worldwide are using smartphones as a part of their routine lives for searching information, comparing prices, making reservations, as well as generating content. Therefore, it is for hoteliers to cope with this new consumers' behavior change and provide mobile solutions for selling their products and services in order to satisfy customers' needs and expectations and remain competitive in the marketplace. In this sense, sites represent an important platform for communicating and promoting hotels' offer to their potential customers in a mobile way. So well-designed and well-managed mobile websites lead to user satisfactions, which in turn increase their purchasing intentions. Furthermore, there are 5 specific reasons why hotels need mobile websites. First, because smartphones are quickly becoming the last-minute reservation channel. So having hotel mobile websites leads to last-minute mobile purchases. Second, because customers expect mobile services. So generally, potential customers expect that they have the information in a glance and in few weeks. And third, customers will not install hotel apps, which means that potential customers that they want, for example, simple information such as address and phone numbers. They don't want to install the hotel apps, upload it and install it in order to get the information. And the fourth reason is because hotel emails are now predominantly being read in mobile devices. The fifth reason is because competitors are doing it. Are you? So generally, hoteliers don't want to go elsewhere. However, staying behind will certainly make them to lose the market share. So let's find out the number of smartphone users worldwide from 2016 to 2021. So clearly, the spectacular growth of smartphone users starting from 1 billion.06 from 2012 to almost 4 billions in 2021. And behind this huge number of smartphone users, let's discuss travelers' behavior. So before their journey, 70% of travelers have done travel research on their smartphones. And from planning to booking, 42% of people globally have booked a hotel on mobile device. 70% of last-minute hotel bookings are made on mobile devices. During their stay, 57% of travelers feel that travel brands should personalize guest information. In terms of loyalty and after their stay, 56% of travelers are loyal to brands that demonstrate a deep understanding of their priorities and preferences. So in the hotel industry, most studies on mobile technologies were focused mainly on mobile applications, and the researchers on mobile websites are still limited. Therefore, the purpose of this study is to provide a comprehensive systematic literature review to examine the state of the art related to hotel mobile websites article published between 2017 and 2020. So previous studies revealed that smartphone users prefer to use a well-designed and tailor-made mobile website, full website page. Thus, a well-designed mobile website should be simple and provide the same service and information as desktop websites. However, knowledge on developing and evaluating mobile websites in the hotel industry remains limited. Evidence revealed that users of mobile tourism websites have high requirements of content and ease of use, whereas users of mobile bank websites have high requirements for security and content. Therefore, further investigation on the usability requirements for hotel mobile websites. So various mobile technology studies in the hospitality and tourism industry have generally focused on the development and evaluation of mobile applications rather than investigating mobile websites. Therefore, accurate website evaluation is important for long-term online business environments. However, existing website evaluation models were developed by considering the traditional website context which may be inapplicable to mobile websites. For example, mobile websites have some specific features such as screen size, speed, low screen resolutions, short battery life, and so on. In terms of the methodology of the study, all hotel mobile websites related articles corresponding to the hotel industry were identified and collected from the most two popular online databases and engines, namely Google Scholar and Science Direct, from November 2020 to December 2020. And to identify the relevant articles, we used several keywords such as mobile hotel website, smartphone, hotel mobile bookings, hotel mobile reservation, and that are included in the titles, abstracts, or keywords. And we selected only the peer-reviewed articles published in leading tourism and hospitality journals for analysis. Also, only full-length papers in English were retrieved, and the study information from books, conference papers, business reports, theses, and the research notes and other relevant publications. Also, to identify the relevant articles, we first read the title, abstracts, and keywords of articles, then the whole article in detail to filter out in depth the inappropriate papers. And finally, we selected a total of 31 relevant articles for the analysis. So the results of this study reveal that scholars have pointed out the relationship between and many other subjects such as booking a hotel via smartphones, mobile hotel booking loyalty, customer reviews, satisfaction of mobile hotel reservation, users' acceptance of mobile hotel booking trends, perceived the risk in mobile travel booking, first impressions in mobile hotel websites, and adaptation of hotel web pages in mobile devices. However, the analyzed articles fail to provide models for evaluation of mobile hotel website features, and only one study that has examined the dimensions and mobile websites and their significance from the perspectives of users, in which they have included two dimensions, namely usability and functionality. And studies have yet to investigate the impact of gender and age of users on behavior. Most of the articles analyzed use the quantitative methods with 77%, outnumbering the qualitative ones with 15%, or mixed method approaches with only 8%. And generally, the most the mobile hotel websites is the technology acceptance model, among many others, such as theory of planned behavior, theory of acceptance and use of technology model, and diffusion of innovation theory. To conclude, this study provides an overall understanding about the importance of mobile websites in the hotel industry. Also, the study provides insights to hotel managers regarding the key characteristics of mobile websites that lead to the website effectiveness. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Imane. Now we have the first presentation of today of this session, and the authors we have three authors in this case: Carmen Díaz Roldán, José María, I think that is José Manuel Pérez de la Cruz, and María del Carmen Ramos Herrera. I don't know who will be the presenter.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, María del Carmen Ramos.
Yes, María del Carmen.
I'm seeing you.
Yes, I'm going to be the presenter.
Okay, thank you.
My slides?
Yes, I'm seeing you the first slide.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. Today I'm going to present.
I'm sorry, one question. The sound is very low.
Let me check if I can do. Can you hear me better?
I'm hearing, but in a very, very, very low level.
Can you hear
Mm.
me? More or less.
Not a lot, but I think we can understand you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Well, good afternoon to everybody. I'm going to present a paper done in collaboration with Professor Carmen Díaz Roldán and José María Pérez de la Cruz, titled on the vulnerability of economics to COVID, the challenges of the recovery. So, as we know, the containment measures initially taken in China provoked a supply shock that directly affected to global value chains and therefore contributed to the fall in the industrial output worldwide. So the confinement of the population translated in turn into a decrease in demand. So this situation has caused liquidity restrictions and access to credit, with the risk of extending the negative economic effect beyond overcoming the health crisis. It has been a widely observed fact that in the COVID crisis, the survival of economies has been based on the availability of access to technology and on the technological skills of the population to adapt to different changes. So this unprecedented turn to the use of technology has not only been a key factor in the degree of resilience of the countries, but will also have repercussions on the current production model, since as a precautionary measure, the war of the future will be even more reoriented toward activities based on the use of technology. So in these unprecedented circumstances, the most vulnerable economies are those that are highly dependent on the low technology service sector, are those that the sectorial specialization is based on activities with scarce technological component, those that population with less access to technology, those that are less trained in technological skills, and those that have a high deficit and public debt ratios. So given the moment in which we find ourselves, just at the dawn of the changes caused by the COVID crisis, the objective of our study will be to infer what are the main characteristics of economies that, given the previous arguments, will favor the economies to be less vulnerable to the economic effect of this crisis. So to do this, we will analyze how certain variables have contributed to the output growth in a group of countries in the years after the 2008 economic crisis. In other words, we are going to study what were the factors that contributed to recovery and growth during recent years. The variable of interest will be grouped into three different areas: the development of the productive sector, the use of technology, and the structure of public finance. So the thesis that we propose is that those countries that have had and have greater access to technology and make better use of it will have more facility to face the changes and will be less vulnerable to the economic crisis derived from the pandemic. So related to the factors of economic growth, as we know in the literature of economic growth, one of the main arguments to explain the different evolution of economics over time has been differences in productivity, such as Caldor, Revenue, and Thompson, Dulcet, among others, authors. So it seems that the countries that could best overcome the general decrease in output due to the COVID crisis are those that have a higher level of technological development and a greater endowment in terms of human capital. Regarding the implication of technology on the labor market, Seira pointed out that the countries with high productivity are those that adopt technological innovation, which explain the differences in production per capita among countries. From the endogenous growth approach perspective, human capital plays a much more prominent role today in explaining technological progress and its impact on labor productivity. See, for instance, authors such as Jorgensen and Stirrott or Jorgensen in 2001. From another point of view, Kai and Van Boren in 2018 analyzed the impact of digitalization on flexible jobs. And the results show that as the value added of the ICT increases, also flexible job increases. And De La Cámara in 2000 has recently analyzed the change in the labor market due to the emergence of telework. With respect to the government sector, as we know, government expenditure and external deficit prove to be a key factor of economic growth and consequently of recovery after a crisis. But the limit to the potential benefit could arise from unsustainable government deficit and also from unsustainable external deficit. Therefore, the importance of avoiding excessive deficit are crucial. Regarding to the methodology and empirical application, we will analyze the extent to which certain variables have contributed to the economic growth after the 2008 economic crisis. We have grouped the factors into three different sets, as I explained before: the structure of the productive sector, the labor market and the living condition of population, and also the characteristic of a public sector. In particular, we will try to identify in an indirect way what type of country would be more vulnerable to cope with the COVID crisis. For our empirical analysis, we will use data on the 27 European unions taken from the Eurostat, and the period covers the year from 2008 to 2019. Given the characteristics of our sample, we will apply panel data techniques. In particular, we show the result from the fixed effect, random effect, and the pool OLS. With respect to our variables, as a dependent variable, we choose the gross domestic public growth. Related to the variables focusing on the productive sectors, we take into account the manufacturing, tourism, and non-financial services. The variables related to technology and labor market are high technology and knowledge employees, the internet access by household, and the variables related to the public sector, we consider the government deficit and the balance of payment position. So in the following table, we present the results considering all the countries, and regarding the three sectoral variables, it can be seen how they all contribute significantly to the economic growth, and the proportion to which they contribute is similar, although non-financial services show a slightly higher coefficient, and the employment in sectors with a high technological content is the variable that most drive economic growth. On the other hand, the proportion of households with internet access also it has a positive and significant effect. However, does not have a much weight in the economic growth production. And the variable capturing the government deficit or surplus show a positive and significant coefficient, although its contribution to economic growth hardly represents a third of that shown by the sectorial variables. Our preferred method of estimation is the fixed effect method according to the Hausmann test. So this allows to extract the unobserved and invariant heterogeneity of each country of the data set. So to what extent will the analyzed group of countries respond successfully to the COVID crisis? We could say that those countries showing figures of the explanatory variables in better position than the average of the whole group would be less vulnerable. So now we show the average values of the variables for each country and the whole period in relation to the average value of each variable for the European countries group. Our assumption is that the countries showing a participation above the European average would be less vulnerable to the COVID crisis. So here I'm going to focus only on the most important tables given the time. So in the following table, given the role played by the manufacturing sector in the rise of production and consequently in favoring the economic growth, the economies showing a participation above the European average would be less vulnerable to the COVID crisis, provided that the level of production prior to the confinement were recovered. So according to this assumption, And according to the figures, we can say that the countries that best placed would be Ireland, Czech Republic, and Romania, while Cyprus, Luxembourg, and Greece show a limited contribution to the output growth. In the following table, we show the average values of the activities related to the non-financial services, and most of them can be supplied by telework and online services. Therefore, it could be expected that their contribution has been maintained or even increased during the lockdown. According to the figures, the countries in which the non-financial sector contribution to the economic growth is above the European average are France, Malta, and Netherlands. On the contrary, Greece, Bulgaria, and Lithuania show the lowest figures. As highlighted in the literature review, employment in technology and knowledge-intensive sectors proves to be one of the key factors of economic growth. So from this table, we can conclude that countries living in technology and knowledge-intensive sectors would be less vulnerable to an economic crisis, in the sense that during the recovery, they could be able to restart activities of the higher productivity with more value added. In this table, we can see that in relation to the European average, the countries best situated are Ireland, Finland, and Malta. And the worst position we can consider Lithuania, Romania, and Greece. So just to finish, I will try to give you the conclusion. So despite of the heterogeneity of the European countries, the main driving force of recovery and economic growth after the financial crisis of 2008 were first, the employment in sectors with a high technological content. So the European economic growth is strongly linked to the evolution of this variable. Second, the expansion of the non-financial services sector and manufacturing. And third, the use of government deficit. So during the lockdown in the COVID crisis, only the basic and remote distant activities has been permitted. So we expect that there will be changes in the current production model, and the work in the future will be reoriented towards the technology and knowledge-intensive sectors. So which are the main implications for the economic policy? So it is important to design public policies focusing on promoting the adoption of technology, promoting the incorporation of high technological components into production, facilitating the training of workers in technological skills, and also providing access to technology to the population. And that's all. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, you can ask.
Thank you very much, Carmen.
You're welcome.
Now we are on time, and we have the last presentation. This is the paper prepared by Margarita Villon and Rocío Marco.
Hi, good afternoon.
Margarita, good afternoon.
Hi, Professor Gallardo. Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to share the presentation, and please you tell me if you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, and Rocío? Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. We are Professor Rocío Marco and myself, Margarita Villon. We both are professors at Autonomous University of Madrid. And here we are to present the digital divide, the research digital divide in digital payments, a critical barrier for economic resilience of African countries in the post-COVID era. We would like to emphasize that this is work in progress. So this is a very preliminary study, but we wanted to share with you our results. As you have, as already you have mentioned, Professor Gallardo, well, the emerging research shows very positive effects of the use of technology, the digitalization in general, and the available evidence tells us that digitalization might mitigate the impacts of the pandemic. And in the case of Africa, the COVID-19 has been considered as a potential catalyst for the digital transformation. However, and despite this fact, and despite the fact that electronic commerce and mobile phone payments have been considered areas for further development in the future, however, there is a critical barrier that we have to consider, and this is the digital divide, because the digital divide might mitigate the positive impacts of the digital transformation in Africa. For this reason, we are interested in exploring what happens with the digital divide. The previous literature has already studied this topic, but the available literature has explored it from different perspectives. For example, considering the comparison between Africa and the rest of the world, or at the individual, studying the divide at individual household levels, for example, or focusing on specific countries. But we are interested in exploring the digital divide for digital payments, but considering the divide between the different African countries. So we have two different objectives. The first one is to identify the patterns of digital payments for African countries, trying to understand this digital divide. And second, we want to identify what factors might be associated with the differences between the countries and the patterns detected. Our contribution, we consider that the work will contribute to the literature by extending the analysis of the digital divide and digital payments, and by providing specific evidence for African countries. As for the model methodology and data, we depart from the diffusion theory, and from the theory and from the empirical evidence, we know that the digital payments, the use of digital payments are influenced by a wide range of factors. So we consider that, and we apply a methodology that will allow to detect how important these factors are. In the first stage, we use cluster analysis because we're interested in grouping the countries for the two variables of interest, in our case, digital commerce and mobile phone payments. And we will do that for 39 African countries, and using the data for 2019. After that, once we have grouped the countries, we are interested in explaining the clusters, right? And we are going to, in this second stage, what we're going to do is to apply discriminant analysis to understand the reasons why the countries are classified in those countries. The reasons, the variables that discriminate the classification. And we are going to use, as I mentioned before, a range of variables, infrastructure and telecommunication indicators. You can see here the source and the year that we've used. So we use infrastructure and telecommunication indicators, economic and institutional indicators, social and demographic indicators, considering, for example, the use of the technology, the importance of education, for example, the case of the digital skills, and also demographic and geographic variables as well, as you can see in the slide. And finally, we have considered financial indicators. As for our results, and prior to show you the final result, I mean the preliminary result that we have obtained, we would like to share with you a little bit about the evolution of our variables of interest. And it should be noted that all this information includes the forecast adjusted for the expected impact of the COVID-19. So here, for example, you can see that in the case of Africa, if we compare with the rest of the world, we have here you have the penetration rates for digital commerce and mobile post payments, and here you see the gap in terms of comparing Africa with the rest of the world. Here we have the COVID impact on the transaction value and users penetration for the two variables. And here you can see that, for example, in 2020, we should highlight in this case the slowdown of the electronic commerce. This is electronic commerce, and this is mobile phone. And this slowdown is mainly due to e-commerce electronic services. And here we have the evolution after in 2020, but the forecast as well for both in terms of penetration rates for both variables. And of course, we should emphasize the relevance of mobile payments in Africa. And here you see that after the COVID in 2020 and after that, the trend is that the mobile payments transaction is going to be, they're going to be more and more important. And here you have, for example, that out of the total digital payments in Africa, the share of the mobile phone payments in, for example, this is the forecast for 2024, you can see that in Africa, the mobile payments will represent nearly 60% and would be the leader in the world in terms of the weight of the mobile payments out of the total digital payments. And here, finally, we have measured the digital divide again for the two indicators, the digital commerce divide and the mobile payments divide. And here you can see, for example, in the case of digital commerce, the divide ranges from 4% in Burundi to 40% in South Africa. And here the divide is lower, but still important. So this means that after the COVID, the digital divide will continue, its trend, it seems. And here we can see the same, but we have mapped the ranking and penetration rates. And here you can see that in both cases, the penetration rates, they differ because the correlation between the two variables of interest, meaning electronic commerce and mobile payments, is, although it's positive, is weak. And because we can see that because of from our correlation analysis. Okay, now the results, the main results. We obtained three cluster solution. This means that we have obtained three different groups. The first one captures the countries with high levels of digital commerce. The second one captures countries with high levels of mobile phone payments. And the last one captures those countries lagging behind with low levels of both dimensions. So once we have determined the clusters, by the way, here you have the classification, a map with the classification of the countries in the three clusters, right? And in white meaning that we do not have data. Okay, so C1, C2, and C3 here in the map. Now we want to explain the differences and the three clusters that we have obtained, and we use a multi-discriminant analysis. And as you can see, what we obtain is the first function capturing 77.4% of the variance, and the other one, the second function capturing almost 14%. The overall model fit is very good because it means 94%. It means that the model is quite good in explaining the differences of the three clusters and in classifying, let's say, it's good in classifying the countries in each cluster. So, attending to the results of the discriminant model, here you can see that according to the first function, the first cluster, the C1, I would rephrase. What I mean is that in this case, we can see that the first function explains the differences between the C1 cluster and the rest and the other two. Meaning that the higher the internet use, the higher the secure internet service, the higher the social media use, and the higher the GDP, the higher the likelihood of being classified in C1. Whereas the second function gives us information about what happens with C2 cluster, meaning that the higher the mobile broadband and the higher the digital skills, the higher the likelihood of being classified as a C2. And here you can see the cluster's profile according to the main discriminant indicators. And here, for example, you have the C2, mobile broadband and digital skills, as I mentioned before. Our conclusions, and we would like to insist again that these are very preliminary results, but we have determined, or we have obtained 3 different patterns of digital payments, and we consider that what we have obtained for 2019 would remain the same after the COVID, and at least in the medium term. We found different devices for both e-commerce and mobile phone payments, and I think this is interesting. What we obtain is that the differences are explained by supply factors and demand factors, infrastructure, of course, telecommunication infrastructure, but also by demand factors. For example, the use of internet, the digital skills as well, and also, of course, the mobile broadband infrastructure. But the important thing, in my opinion, is apart from that, is that we expected to have an important role played by other variables, such as, for example, institutional variables or financial variables. But the results indicate that financial or institutional factors do not play a discriminant role when explaining the differences. Limitations of the study, lack of available data, and more research is needed to determine the result, to obtain the results for 2020. But apart from that, we wanted to explore what role this divide will play in the recovery of the African countries, and especially in terms of the impacts that you can see there in the slide, the role played by the divide in the future impacts of digital payments on African economic relationships after the COVID. But well, this is, I mentioned already, this is work in progress, and we have to continue working. So thank you very much. This is the end of our presentation.
Thank you very much, Margarita. Now, I had a look to the chat, and we have no question. But if there is somebody in the audience that would like to address a question, we have some minutes to answer the question. Is there any question? No. Okay. In any case, if somebody has a question, you can reach all the authors by email, and we will be pleased to answer your question. Then, if you let me, we are to close the session of today, and we will see tomorrow in the other session scheduled for tomorrow. If there is not any question, we close the session and see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you, Fernando.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.